Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at Sejanus, His Fall by Ben Jonson. We are at Act 5. Act 5. We have reached what we might call his fall. That's, I say, not a spoiler. Hits the title of the play. And also, can you count history as... Can you spoil history? I don't know if that I suppose you can, but it feels like, history is a thing. Anyway, does it matter if you know? Yeah, discuss. We'll move on. Reading today we don't quite have enough readers to properly do Act 5 justice. There's an awful lot of moving parts at times. A lot of random people saying random things. Hopefully, it will come across reasonably clearly, at least to us, if not to you, watching at home. And so, reading today, Sejanus, as well as Regulus and Nuntius, is...
I'm Alex Scott Fairley, and I'm an actor based, for the moment, in Highland Perthshire.
Reading Satrius, Flamen, Tribunes 1 and 2, and Trio is...
Aliki, Chapple, actor and translator, currently in the city of Athens.
Reading Natta, First Ministry, Latiaris, Haterus, and Praetor is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author and teacher based in sunny Essex.
Reading Terentius, Cotta, Laco, and Second Ministry is...
Steve Longstaffe, based in not at all sunny northwest England.
Reading Macro, Minutius, Sanquinius, and Third Senator is...
Alan, doing his large and little impression in Suffolk.
And reading Pomponius, Third Ministry, Arruntius, Regulus, and Second Senator is...
Sarah Blake, Soupy in Germany.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions. I will also be staggering in to read First Senator, Senators, Lepidus and Lictor, and fingers crossed that will all be fine. I thought I gave Lictor to somebody else, but obviously I didn't. I obviously kept hold of it. Oh, well, never mind. Some of that may change as we go along, because I say, I'm not quite sure how well this doubling is going to work. But at the first scene we're going to look at, it should all be fine, he said. Because if I've messed this one up, then really we're doomed. Act 5, Scene 1, enter Sejanus.
Swell my joys, and faint not to declare yourselves as ample as your causes are. I did not live till now. This is my first hour, wherein I see my thoughts reached by my power. But this, and gripe my wishes, great and high, the world knows only two, that's Rome and I. My roof receives me not, 'tis air I tread, and at each step I feel my advanced head knock out a star in heaven. Reared to this height, all my desires seem modest, poor, and slight, that did before sound important. 'Tis place, not blood, discerns the noble and the base. Is there not something more than to be Caesar? Must we rest there? It irks to have come so far, to be so near a stay. Caligula, would thou stood stiff and many in our way? Winds lose their strength when they do empty fly, unmet of woods or buildings. Great fires die that want their matter to withstand them. So it is our grief and will be our loss to know our power shall want opposites, unless the gods, by mixing in the cause, would bless our fortune with their conquest. That were worth Sejanus' strife. Durst fates but bring it forth.
Enter Terentius.
Safety to great Sejanus.
Now, Terentius?
Is not my lord the wonder?
Speak it, no.
I meet it violent in the people's mouths, who run in routs to Pompey's theatre to view your statue, which they say sends forth a smoke as from a furnace, black and dreadful.
Some traitor hath put fire in. You, go see, and let the head be taken off to look what 'tis.
Exit Terentius.
Some slave hath practised an imposture to stir the people. How now? Why return ye?
Re-enter Terentius with Satrius and Natta.
The head, my lord, is already ta'en off. I saw it, and at the opening there leapt out a great and monstrous serpent.
Monstrous? Why? Had it a beard and horns, no heart, a tongue forked as flattery? Looked it of the hue to such as live in great men's bosoms? Was the spirit of it Macro's?
May it please the most divine Sejanus, in my days, and by his sacred fortune, I affirm it, I have not seen a more extended, grown, foul, spotted, venomous, ugly.
Oh, the fates, what a wild musters here of attributes to express a worm, a snake.
But how that should come there, my lord?
What? And you too, Terentius? I think you mean to make it a prodigy in your reporting.
Can the wise Sejanus think heaven hath meant it less?
Oh, superstition! Why then the falling of our bed that brake this morning, burdened with the populous weight of our expecting clients to salute us, or running of the cat betwixt our legs as we set forth unto the capital, were prodigies?
I think them ominous, and would they had not happened. As today the fate of some of your servants who, declining their way, not able for the throng to follow, slept down the Geminies and break their necks. Besides, in taking your last augury, no prosperous bird appeared, but croaking ravens, flagged up and down, and from the sacrifice flew to the prison, where they sat all night beating the air with their obstreperous beaks. I dare not counsel, but I could entreat that great Sejanus would attempt the gods once more with sacrifice.
What excellent fools religion makes of men! Believes Terentius, if these were dangers, as I shame to think them, the gods could change the certain course of fate? Or if they could, they would, now in a moment, for a beeve's fat or less, be bribed to invert those long decrees. Then think the gods, like flies, are to be taken with the steam of flesh or blood diffused about their altars. Think their power as cheap as I esteem it small, of all the throng that fill the Olympian hall, and without pity laid poor Atlas's back. I know not that one deity but Fortune, to whom I would throw up in begging smoke one grain of incense, or whose ear I'd buy with thus much oil. Her I indeed adore, and keep her grateful image in my house, sometime belonging to a Roman king, but now called mine, as by the better style. To her I care not, if, for satisfying your scrupulous fantasies, I go offer. Bid our priest prepare us honey, milk, and poppy. His masculine odours and night vestments say our rites are instant, which performed, you'll see how vain and worthy laughter your fears be.
And we'll just pause there as we take in the augurs, the augury the augurs going forward, and it's not good. It doesn't look good, does it? I mean, if anyone didn't know the title of the play, you might think that something bad might be going on prophetically in terms of Sejanus here. I mean, you put a statue up and then terrible things happen to it, and it's just, oh god, no, none of this is good. Have you seen the birds we got? We're not getting the good birds coming. We're getting the not nice ones where it's not going well. We want good, but the croaking ravens, not a good sign. Sejanus, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I don't believe in this stuff. It's sort of clearly rubbish. Who here thinks Sejanus is possibly wrong here? Yeah. Thoughts from the room, Aliki?
I mean, I don't believe in gods, but tell the priest to go prepare us honey, milk, and poppy on the instant. Right.
Yeah. Well, you can hedge your bets. I think it's allowed. Yes, how much of this is a front and how much isn't? Because that's not really a soliloquy at the end per se. He's talking to someone. I don't think Terentius has exited, has he? So that's who's he talking to? If he's talking to the audience, that's a different thing to if he's talking to a person. We've already discussed about the different sort of modes of speech, from really big public speaking to talking to someone to talking to an audience in this text. So I think there might be some of that going on there as well. Any other thoughts? We're just sort of keying in, really. So we'll take a few scenes at a wallop in a moment. But Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was thinking like we have that thing with Jonson where, why use one word when 50 will do? But the speeches in this scene, I feel like they were quite concise. And I love the foreshadowing of the statue. And I think that the responses to the statue are somewhat muted for what was going on there. Like a snake came out of its head, its neck, its trunk, something. And I was like, they should be much more surprised at that.
It's really not a good sign. I mean, there's no ambiguity to this as an interpretation. All the bad things have happened. And yes, no, for all the relative length of this play, and it's not a short play, but it's not an excessively long play in the sort of every man out of his humour vein. It's tightly written. I mean, there isn't really that much here that you're going, well, yes, we could cut that, but it's still on point. It's not like he's repeating variations on the same joke 15 times, which sometimes he does in comedies, where you kind of have to pick the one you like rather than the other 14. But here there is an economy, or at least a concision that's quite nice. Yeah. That isn't to say you wouldn't trim some of this back, but there's still a lot of it. But it's solid stuff. Okay, let's move on, run a few scenes into each other as we'll fly from different areas to another. Sejanus has left the building, as it were. Act 5, he's still there, he's somewhere else. Act 5, Scene 2, enter Cotta and Pomponius.
Pomponius, whither in such speed?
I go to give my lord Sejanus notice.
What?
Of Macro.
Is he come?
Entered but now the house of Regulus.
The opposite consul?
Some half hour since.
And by night too. Stay set, I'll bear you company.
Along then.
Exeunt Act 5, Scene 3, enter Macro, Regulus and attendant.
It is Caesar's will to have a frequent senate, and therefore must your edict lay deep mulct on such as shall be absent.
So it doth. Bear it, my fellow consul, to add scribe.
And tell him it must be early be proclaimed. The place, Apollo's temple.
Exit attendant.
That's remembered.
And at what hour?
Yes.
You do forget to send one for the provost of the watch.
I have not. Here he comes.
Enter Laco.
Gracious Laco, you're a friend, most welcome. By and by I'll speak with you. You must procure this list of the Praetorian cohorts with the names of the centurions and their tribunes.
Aye.
I bring you letters and a health from Caesar.
Both come well.
And hear you, with your note, which are the eminent men and most of action.
That shall be done you too.
Most worthy Laco, Caesar salutes you.
Exit Regulus.
Consul, death and furies. Come now. The argument will please you, sir. Oh, Regulus! The anger of the gods. Follow your diligent legs and o'ertake them in likeness of the gout.
Re-enter Regulus.
Oh, my good lord, we lacked you present. I would pray you send another to Pulcinus trio straight to tell him you will come and speak with him. The matter we'll devise to stay him there, while I with Laco do survey the watch.
Exit Regulus.
What are your strengths, Gracinius?
7 cohorts.
See what Caesar writes, and God again! Sure a vein of mercury in his feet. Know you what store of the Praetorian soldiers Sejanus holds about him for his guard?
I cannot the just number, but I think 3 centuries.
3? Good.
Well, at most not 4.
And who be those centurions?
Well, that the consul can best deliver you.
And he's away! Spite on his nimble industry. Crassinus, you find what place you hold there in the trust of royal Caesar?
Aye, and I am.
Sir, the honours there proposed are but beginnings of his great favours.
They are more.
I heard him when he did study what to add.
My life, and all I hold.
You were his own first choice, which doth confirm as much as you can speak, and will, if we succeed, make more. Your guards are 7 cohorts, you say?
Yes,
These we must hold still in readiness and undischarged.
I understand so much. But how it can...
Be done without some suspicion, you'll object?
Re-enter Regulus.
What's that?
The keeping of the watch in arms when morning comes.
The Senate shall be met and set so early in the temple as all mark of that shall be avoided.
If we need, we have commission to possess the palace, enlarge Prince Drusus and make him our chief.
That secret would have burnt his reverend mouth had he not spit it out by now. By the gods, you carry things too. Let me borrow a man or two to bear these. That of freeing Drusus. Caesar projected as the last and utmost, not else to be remembered.
Enter servants.
Here are servants.
These to Arruntius, these to Lepidus, these bear to Cotta, this to Latiaris. They demand you of me. Say I obtain fresh horse, and don't depart it.
Exeunt servants.
You, my lord, to your colleague, and be sure to hold him, with long narration of the new fresh favours meant to Sejanus, his great patron. I, with trusty Laco here, are for the guards, then to divide. For night hath many eyes, whereof, though most do speak, yet some spies.
And they exit. I will pause here. I was going to run on for another, but I think we should take in some of this. We had that sort of preview scene of, have you noticed what Macro's doing? He's going over there. I've got to tell Sejanus, and then we go into the room where the meeting is happening. And yeah, it's one of those scenes where you've got that question of who's listening. And who's in the room, and why doesn't he stay in the room? Why does he keep running out of the room? It's like, you tell this guy to do something and he does it immediately. It's like, no, I had some more. Oh, never mind. So it's interesting, the sort of bustle that this little scene has, and these people coming in, and the preparations of who to support and who to use, and it's a much more active little set of scenes. This actually it's like we're getting these little scenes. And we've talked about this earlier in the play, where we have these big, massive scenes, and then we have these very, very small scenes. And here we've definitely got these little scenes, which are very active scenes in that sense. Any thoughts in the room? Here I am, vamping along. Aliki.
Well, I think we have had that earlier, but the tension's been definitely ramped up in two of these scenes. We've had people coming in and out, and every time that the tension rises, and we've got all of these servants, however many, coming in. You take these letters, you take these letters. It's all kind of, you can feel it coming to a head, and it's doing it structurally as well as in terms of plot.
Yes, whereas before, all of the plots, they could happen when the Senate next meets. That'll be fine. There isn't a sense of urgency of getting rid of the people that Sejanus or whoever wanted to get rid of. Whereas here, there is no longer any time. This has got to happen now. We've got to do this because our enemies are moving. They're moving. This position, the time is now, and that's a nice thing to be drawing towards the end of a play for. I like the potential that's earning us. Any other thoughts? No. Okay, let's move on then to Act 5, Scene 4. Again, scene numbers may vary depending on the edition you're looking at. We've gone for a relatively maximalist approach. Act 5, Scene 4. Enter Precones, Flamen, Tribunes, Tribunes, Ministry, lots of things, as well as Sejanus, Terentius, Satrius, Natta, etc.
Be all profane far hence. Fly far off. Be absent far hence. Be all profane.
Tibicines and Tubicines sound while the Flamen washeth.
We have been faulty, but repent us now and bring pure hands, pure vestments, and pure minds.
Pure vessels.
And pure offerings.
Garlands pure.
Bestow your garlands, and with reverence place the vermin on the altar.
Favour your tongues?
While they sound again, the Flamen takes of the honey with his finger and tastes, then ministers to all the rest. So of the milk, and in earthen vessel he deals about. Which done, he sprinkleth upon the altar milk, then imposeth the honey, and kindleth his gums, and after censing about the altar, placeth his censer thereon, into which they put several branches of poppy, and the music ceasing proceeds.
Great Mother Fortune, Queen of human state, redress of action, arbitress of fate, to whom all sway, all power, all empire bows, be present and propitious to our vows.
Favour it with your tongues.
Be present and propitious to our vows. Accept our offering.
Accept our offering and be pleased, great goddess.
Great goddess.
See, the image stirs.
And turns away.
Fortune averts her face.
Avert you, gods, the prodigy! Still some pious rite we have neglected. Yet heaven be appeased, and be all tokens false and void that speak thy present wrath.
Be thou dumb, scrupulous priest, and gather up thyself with these thy wares, which I, in spite of thy blind mistress or thy juggling mystery religion, throw thus scorned on the earth.
Overthrows the statue and the altar.
Nay, hold thy look averted till I woo thee turn again, and thou shalt stand to all posterity, the eternal game and laughter, with thy neck writhed to thy tail like a ridiculous cat. Avoid these fumes, these superstitious lights, and all these cozening ceremonies, you, your pure and spiced conscience.
Exeunt all but Sejanus, Terentius, Satrius, and Natta.
I, the slave and mock of fools, scorn on my worthy head, that have been titled and adored a god, yea, sacrificed unto myself in Rome, no less than Jove, and I be brought to do a peevish giglet rites. Perhaps the thought and shame of that made Fortune turn her face, knowing herself the lesser deity and but my servant. O bashful queen, if so, Sejanus thanks thy modesty. Who's that?
Enter Pomponius and Minutius.
Fortune suffers till he hears my news. I have waited here too long. Macro, my lord.
Speak lower and withdraw.
And there takes him aside.
Are these things true?
They're gazing at it in the streets.
What's that?
Minutius tells us here, my lord, that a new head being set upon your statue, a rope is since found wreathed about it. But now a fiery meteor in the form of a great ball was seen to roll along the troubled air where yet it hangs unperfect. The amazing wonder of the multitude.
No more. That Macro's come is more than all.
Macro come?
They saw him.
Well, with whom?
With Regulus.
Terentius,
My lord.
send for the tribunes. We will straight have up more of the soldiers for our guard.
Exit Terentius.
Minutius, we pray you go for Cotta, Latiaris, Trio, the consul, or what senators you know are sure and ours.
Exit Minutius.
You, my good Natta, for Laco, provost of the watch.
Exit Natta.
Now, Satrius, the time of proof comes on. Arm all our servants and without tumult.
Exit Satrius.
You, Pomponius, hold some good correspondence with the consul. Attempt him, noble friend.
Exit Pomponius.
These things begin to look like dangers, now worthy my fates. Fortune, I see thy worst. Let doubtful states and things uncertain hang upon thy will. Me surest death shall render certain still. Yet why is now my thought turned toward death, whom fates have let go on so far in breath, unchecked or unreproved? I that did help to fell the lofty cedar of the world, Germanicus, that at one stroke cut down Drusus, that upright elm, withered his vine, laid Silius and Sabinus, two strong oaks, flat on the earth, besides those other shrubs, Cordus and Socia, Claudia pulchra, Furnius and Gallus, which I have grubbed up. and since have set my axe so strong and deep into the root of spreading Agrippina, lopped off and scattered her proud branches, Nero, Drusus and Caius too, although replanted. If you will, destinies, that after all, I thinked now ere I touch my period, you are but cruel, and I already have done things great enough. All Rome hath been my slave, the Senate sat an idle looker on, and witness of my power, when I have blushed more to command than it to suffer. All the fathers have sat ready and prepared to give me empire, temples, or their throats, when I would ask them. And what crowns the top? Rome, Senate, people, all the world have seen Jove but my equal, Caesar but my second. 'Tis then your malice, fates, who but your own envy and fear to have any power long known.
Exit Sejanus. It's really kicking up a groove here, isn't it? It's really, I mean, it's a lovely mirroring of the previous scene of these people being sent, but it's also an extension of that whole question of, yes, he's going to, at the end of the previous scene with Sejanus, he's going to send off this, let's do some proficiency stuff, and more bad augury things happen with turning statuary. So we get this visual dimension that we've had visual sense of sort of lots of people on stage doing things and moving about and doing quite minor things, but it's not been a visually dynamic play so far in this kind of vein. So this is fascinating. He's really ramping up Act 5. I'm much more engaged. I think last few acts we've been a little less engaged. We've been a bit distanced from everything, despite some of the rather odd, horrible political things going on. Whereas I feel much more engaged this time. Aliki.
Well, yeah, I mean, before it was all sorts of people we'd only seen for 5 lines or a speech or so getting offed or disgraced or whatever. And now all of a sudden it's the people who are our protagonists who are at this high pitch. And what a fabulous speech. I mean, Sejanus has some fabulous speeches earlier in the play too, but this one is really, wow.
And it's digging a bit into him more as well. Whereas earlier we were sort of going, he's a bit moustache twirly. Whereas here there's a bit more going on, and it's still playing with pride. And the idea of basically spurning fortune is not a good move. Even if he wasn't doomed before, I suspect he might be doomed now. Because when everyone started doing the chanting thing, we had that long stage direction about, taste the honey, does all the stuff, and it's that sort of thing. How well does that work? But then it gives this impetus to suddenly, when Terentius, the messenger comes in and says, macros come, and it's like, oh, stuff's going down, is it? Because that's political, that's real as well. It's not an augury or something happening at a temple. It's actually, active political action is going down. Stephen.
I was just wondering about the incense, the gums. If we've got an indoor performance, so that we know this happens at the Globe, it may have happened at court. Then we've got 2 very different experiences, haven't we? Because that's those smells indoors may well hang around, hang over, as it were, everything else that happens. I think we don't get a lot of that in early modern drama, do we? That sort of use of smells. I don't know if it's being used, but if it was very smelly, masculine odors and so forth, then that might have been a really interesting kind of top layer to everything else that's going to happen.
Any other thoughts? We have a few more short scenes, lots of short scenes. I'll probably have to run a few together, otherwise we'll run out of time. Act 5, Scene 5, enter Terentius and Tribunes.
Stay here. I'll give his lordship your com.
Enter Minutius, Cotta and Latiaris.
Marcus Terentius, pray you tell my lord, here's Cotta and Latarius.
Sir, I shall. My letter is the very same with yours, only requires me to be present there and give my voice to strengthen his design.
Names he not what it is?
No, nor to you.
'Tis strange and singular doubtful.
So it is. It may be all is left to Lord Sejanus.
Enter Natta and Laco.
Gentlemen, where's my lord?
We wait him here.
To Provost Laco. What's the news?
My lord.
Enter Sejanus.
Now, my right dear, noble, and trusted friends, how much I am a captive to your kindness. Most worthy Cotta, Latiaris, Laco, your valiant hand, and gentlemen, your loves. I wish I could divide myself unto you, or that it lay within our narrow powers to satisfy for so enlarged bounty. Gracinus, we must pray you, hold your guards, unquit when morning comes. Saw you the consul?
Trio will presently be here, my lord.
They're but giving order for the edict to warn the Senate.
How? The Senate?
Yes, this morning in Apollo's temple. We're charged by letter to be there, my lord.
By letter? Pray you, let's see.
Knows not his lordship.
It seems so.
A Senate warned? Without my knowledge? And on this sudden, senators by letters required to be there. Who brought these?
Macro!
Mine enemy. And when?
This midnight.
Time, with every other circumstance doth give it, hath some strain of engine in it. How now?
My lord, Sartorius Macro is without, alone, and prays to have private conference in business of high nature with your lordship, he says to me, which regards you much.
Let him come here.
Better, my lord, withdraw. You will betray what store and strength of friends are now about you, which he comes to spy.
Is he not armed?
We'll search him.
No, but take and lead him to some room where you concealed may keep a guard upon us.
Exit Satrius.
Noble Laco, you are our trust until our own cohorts can be brought up. Your strengths must be our guard. Now, good Minutius, honoured Latiaris.
He salutes them humbly.
Most worthy and my most unwearied friends, I return instantly.
Exit Sejanus.
Most worthy lord.
His lordship is turned instant kind, methinks. I've not observed it in him heretofore.
'Tis true, and it becomes him nobly.
Aye, I am rapt with all.
By Mars, he has my lives, were they 1,000,000, for this only grace.
Aye, and to name a man.
As he did me.
And me?
Who would not spend his life and fortunes to purchase but the look of such a lord?
Neither would not be the Lord's fool, nor the world's.
And Act 5, Scene 6. Enter Sejanus, Macro, and Satrius.
Macro, most welcome, a most coveted friend. Let me enjoy my longings. When arrived you?
About the noon of night.
Satrius, give leave.
Exit Satrius.
I have been, since I came, with both the consuls, on a particular design from Caesar.
How fares it with our great and royal master?
Right plentifully well, as with a prince that still holds out the greatest proportion of his large favours, where his judgment hath made once divine election, like the god that wants not, nor is wearied to bestow where merit meets his bounty, as it doth in you, already the most happy. And ere the sun shall climb the south, most high Sejanus, let not my lord be amused. But to this end was I by Caesar sent for to the isle, with special caution to conceal my journey, and thence had my dispatches privately again to Rome, charged to come here by night, and only to the consuls make narration of his great purpose, that the benefit might come more full and striking by how much was less looked for or aspired by you, or least informed the common thought.
What may be this? Part of myself, dear Macro. If good, speak out, and share with your Sejanus.
If bad, I should forever loathe myself to be the messenger to so good a lord. I do exceed my instructions to acquaint your lordship with thus much, but 'tis my venture on your retentive wisdom, and because I would no jealous scruple should molest or rack your peace of thought. For I assure my noble lord, no senator yet knows the business meant, though but all by several letters are warned to be there, and give their voices, only to add unto the state and grace of what is purposed.
You take pleasure, Macro, like a coy wench in torturing your lover. What can be worth this suffering?
That which follows, the tribunitial dignity and power, both which Sejanus is to have this day, conferred upon him, and by public senate.
Fortune be mine again. Thou hast satisfied for thy suspected loyalty.
My lord, I have no longer time. The day approacheth, and I must back to Caesar.
Where's Caligula?
That I forgot to tell your lordship. Why, he lingers yonder about Capri, disgraced. Tiberius has not seen him yet. He needs would thrust himself to go with me, against my wish or will, but I've quitted his forward trouble with as tardy note as my neglect or silence could afford him. Your lordship cannot now command me aught, because I take no knowledge that I saw you. I shall boast to live to serve your lordship, and so take leave.
Honest and worthy Macro, your love and friendship.
Exit Macro.
Who's there? Satrius, attend my honourable friend forth. Oh, how vain and vile a passion is this fear! What base, uncomely things it makes men do! Suspect their noblest friends as I did this, flatter poor enemies, entreat their servants, stoop, court, and catch at the benevolence of creatures unto whom, within this hour, I would not have vouchsafed a quarter look or piece of face. By you that fools call gods, hang all the sky with your prodigious signs, fill earth with monsters, drop the scorpion down out of the zodiac, or the fiercer lion, shake off the loosened globe from her long hinge, roll all the world in darkness, and let loose the enraged winds to turn up groves and towns. When I do fear again, let me be struck with forked fire and unpitied die. Who fears is worthy of calamity.
Exit Sejanus. So once again, we've got this scene: hustle, bustle, stuff, and then we have the these two major characters squaring off, lying to each other, lying to themselves. It's doing really interesting things, and again, it's paranoia, and it's the kind of things you tell people so that they will do what you want. Aliki.
Sejanus is very easily calmed this time. You know, he was so sneaky earlier in the play, so labyrinthine in his plots, and now he's like, oh, okay, it's fine. Macro says he's my pal. Not to worry. Silly me to be worried about him.
Well, he's seeing all the bustle that's going on before, but nobody's actually come and explained it to him, and it all sounds perfectly reasonable. It's that is the trap. Of course, the trap is to say that no, everyth's happening. Some really good stuff's coming your way, mate. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good day out. It probably won't go that way. We know it won't go that way. It's history. It's playing the same game. It's again lots of little scenes just running into each other. But also people on the periphery, who are also, we've got these occasional asides where, the lower orders are going, I can see which way this is going. Or you think that, do you? You're an idiot. Clearly, if you're taking this on face value. So there's still this bustle of other people's voices sort of being mixed in. Other thoughts? I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm noticing it. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you're talking about the hustle and bustle, and I just got a sense that in this play, time seems to be elongated somehow. As we move forward towards Sejanus's demise, time seems to be slowing down, but the action seems to be more dynamic, seems to be speeding up. I just wondered what everyone else's thoughts were on that.
Yes, what's our relationship with time? How we felt with time? Because the rest of the play has moved over reasonably large periods of time, actually, whereas this is sort of feeling like it's happening overnight. There's lots of nervous energy to it all. That I say was not there earlier. There wasn't that kind of pressure on people and an expectation that something is going to happen now. It's happening, but it's not necessarily happening now, and you don't know when the trap is going to spring. Any other thoughts? Alan?
I'm just wondering whether, in fact, you could stage this as if you've got a largish stage of the groups, one stage left, one stage right, the other up stage, and moving it very quickly between the three groups.
I think you need some level of overlap to make sure that the things flow into each other, to give that sense of momentum. You don't want a scene change between scenes because that will kill the thing stone dead. Whether you can overlap explicitly, I think it'd be quite a good way of dealing with some of the ritual stuff that might slow everything down in the previous scene, to have that being set up while other stuff is going on. That might be a thing. Of course, we haven't taken into effect what the music at that point might do to that scene as well. Aliki?
And we've had that from the very beginning of the play, this sense that people on the stage together are in quite different worlds or in subdivisions of the world, the public realm, the private realm of conspiracy. So that's all been set up, that you can play with space in that way, and then ramp it up when you get here and keep ramping it up.
Yeah, because they're constantly talking about people who are on the other side of the room or etc. So there's this constant reiteration of who people are, which in this room is quite difficult to do because we're doubling so many parts. This play does demand a large cast. It's very hard to double it down because actually it is about the movement of different political targets and everyone's complicity in what is going on, and it's difficult to be complicit if you don't have enough actors to be complicit in the action. Okay, we've got a few more little scenes to do before we do the big scene. Spoilers, there's a big scene coming on, but we're going to do these little scenes again. How they're broken up to be decided by your edition. Act 5, Scene 7. Enter Terentius, Minutius, Laco, Cotta, Latiaris, Pomponius, Regulus trio, and others on different sides.
Not my lord here.
Sir, he will be straight. What news, Fulcinius trio?
Good tidings, but keep it to yourself. My lord Sejanus is to receive this day in open senate the tribunitial dignity.
It's true.
No words, not to your thought, but so believe it.
What says the consul?
Speak it not again. He tells me that today my lord Sejanus...
I must entreat you, Cotta, on your honour not to reveal it.
On my life, sir.
Say.
Is to receive the tribunitial power. But as you are an honourable man, let me conjure you not to utter it, for it's trusted to me with that bond.
I am Harpocrates.
Can you assure it?
Consul told it me, but keep it close.
Lord Latiaris, what's the news?
I'll tell you, but you must swear to keep it secret.
And on the entrance of Sejanus, and from this point onwards, Sarah will be reading Regulus, just to confuse everyone. Yes, there is a confusion as to who's reading Regulus that I have made, but there is a reason why. Sarah was down for that originally, and then I got confused in my own brain. Regulus might get passed around like a beach ball, who knows. Anyway, enter Sejanus.
I knew the fates had on their distaff left more of our thread than so.
Hail, great Sejanus.
Hail the most honoured.
Happy.
I, Sejanus.
Do you bring prodigies too?
May all presage turn to those fair effects whereof we bring your lordship news.
May it please my lord withdraw?
Yes. I will speak to you anon.
My lord, what is your pleasure for the tribunes?
Why, let them be thanked and sent away.
My lord,
Will please your lordship to command me?
No, you are troublesome.
The mood is changed.
Not speak, nor look.
He is wise. We're making friends of such who never love but for their ends.
Exeunt, Act 5, Scene 8. Enter Arruntius and Lepidus, diverse senators passing them by.
Aye, go, make haste. Take heed you be not last to tender your all hail in the wide hall of huge Sejanus. Run a lictor's pace. Stay, not to put your robes on, but away with the pale, troubled ensigns of great friendship stamped in your face. Now, Marcus Lepidus, you still believe your former augury? Sejanus must go downward. You perceive his wane approaching fast?
Believe me, Lucius, I wonder at this rising.
Aye, and that we must give our suffrage to it. You will say it is to make his fall more steep and grievous. It may be so. But think it, they that can with idle wishes say to bring back time. In cases desperate, all hope is crime. See what troops of his officious friends flock to salute my lord, and start before my great proud lord to get a lord-like nod. Attend my lord into the Senate house, bring back my lord, like servile ushers. Make way for my lord, proclaim his idle lordship. More than 10 criers, or 6 noise of trumpets. Make legs, kiss hands, and take a scattered hair from my lord's eminent shoulder.
Sanquinius and Haterus pass over the stage.
See, Sanquinius with his slow belly and his dropsy. Look what toiling haste he makes. Yet here's another, retarded with the gout, will be afore him. Get thee Liburnian porters, thou gross fool, to bear thy obsequious fatness. Like thy peers, they are met. The gout returns, and his great carriage.
Lictors, Regulus, Trio, Sejanus, Satrius, and many other senators pass over the stage. Give way, make place, room for the consul.
Hail, hail, great Sejanus.
Hail, my honoured lord.
We shall be marked anon for our not hail.
That is already done.
It is a note of upstart greatness to observe and watch for these poor trifles, which the noble mind neglects and scorns.
Aye, and they think themselves deeply dishonoured where they are remitted, as if they were necessities that helped to the perfection of their dignities, and hate the men that but refrained them.
Oh, there is a farther cause of hate. Their breasts are guilty, that we know their obscure springs and base beginnings. Thence the anger grows. On. Follow.
Act 5, Scene 9. Enter Macro and Laco.
When all are entered, shut the temple doors and bring your guards up to the gate.
I will.
If you shall hear commotion in the Senate, present yourself and charge on any man shall offer to come forth.
I am instructed.
And they exeunt, sort of. This whole thing is all very flowy again. People are wandering in, people are wandering out. I think what's really interesting about these little scenes here is the importance, of course, that nobody actually really knows what is actually going to happen. I mean, we know because, you know, we're a little bit of history and a little bit of knowledge, and having read the title, we know where the gravity of this is going. But of course, you know, Lepidus and Arruntius is sitting there going, "Oh well, he's won, hasn't he? He's gonna go up there and he's gonna get all these lovely honours." And of course, that's the bait that Sejanus himself is taking. So he's all depressed, and Lepidus is going, "Oh no, I don't think it's going to go that way." But you know, nobody actually knows what's going on. Of course, we get proper signposting for the audience who knows what's going on, because of course Macro's going, "Post the guards, make sure nobody comes out alive. If anyone wants to do anything, you know, let's make sure everything's good." Aliki.
2 things. One, I wish I had known that Lepidus and Arruntius kept doing this double act commentary all the way through the play when we first encountered them at the beginning, because it's so interesting now that they're still there and that they're still doing this thing. And two, isn't it a lovely kind of mix between this quite naturalistic sort of, emotionally anyway, naturalistic observation of how people are around power and times of instability, and then that wonderfully kind of stylized little bit of don't tell anybody, no, I promise I won't, hey, I've got something, but don't tell anybody, which was just brilliantly surreal.
Yeah, and you're right, all these people who were at the beginning of the play who were expressing different opinions, and it feels like that these are these are the commentators who, yeah, they're always speaking truth to power, but nobody cares because they have no power. So they're the ones who survive because they don't count. And I wonder if the others are more politically moving, because, that's something that tyranny sometimes does. It sometimes leaves in place people who don't really count. Oh, look, no, we allow people to speak their opinions because it's just them. Whereas anyone who's got a power base, they're the ones who died earlier. And actually who's marked for death at the beginning is a really interesting thing, because again, even if you know where the play is broadly speaking going, I doubt very many people in the audience know who is actually marked for death in the wider political sphere. So there is a sort of question of, how did these two survive, whereas some of the other people like Silas earlier, who I was very fond of at the time, but he only makes it halfway through the play because he says a little too much. So whereas Arruntius is so over the top there as well. I mean, you could really go for it. Oh my lord, he could really, especially as people are walking by. If he's a buffoon almost, if it's a public, almost a comedy act, then that's another reason why power perhaps ignores him and lets him live, because he's just an idiot. The fact that he's speaking sense doesn't matter. I'm just saying words, by the way. I'm just any other thoughts are allowed. I'm just going to keep riffing. No, okay. Right, let's enter the big scene. In a sense, we're already in the big scene because the big scene effectively started 2 scenes ago. But we've sort of had the amuse-bouche before we get to the action. There are a lot of people talking in this scene, so we're probably going to be a bit slow on our cues, and we're probably going to talk to ourselves a few times, including me. So we'll see how this goes. Fingers crossed. Act 5, Scene 10. Enter Haterus, Trio, Sanquinius. Everybody comes on pretty much, apart from the ones who don't. Diverse other senators, Praecones and Lictors, etc.
How well his lordship looks today.
As if he had been born or made for this hour's state.
Your fellow consuls come about, methinks.
Aye, he's wise.
Sejanus trusts him well.
Sejanus is a noble, bounteous lord.
He is so, and most valiant, and most wise.
He's everything.
Worthy of all and more than bounty can bestow.
His dignity will make him worthy.
Caesar.
But Caesar is but the rector of an isle, he of the empire.
Now he will have power more to reward than ever.
Let us look, we be not slack in giving him our voices.
Not I.
Nor I.
The readier we seem to propagate his honours, will more bind his thoughts to ours.
I think right with your lordship. It is the way to have us hold our places.
Aye, and get more.
More office and more titles.
I will not lose the part I hope to share in these his fortunes for my patrimony.
See how Arruntius sits, and Lepidus.
Let them alone, they will be barked on.
I'll do with others.
So will I.
And I. Men grow not in the state, but as they are planted, warm in his favours.
Noble Sejanus!
Honoured Sejanus! Worthy and great Sejanus!
Gods! How the sponges open and take in and shut again. Look, is not he blessed that gets a seat in eye reach of him? More that comes in here, or tongue reach, oh, but most can claw his subtle elbow, or with a buzz fly below his ears.
Proclaim the Senate's peace, and give last summons by the edict. Silence! In name of Caesar and the Senate, silence! Memmius, Regulus, and Fulcinius trio, consuls, these present calends of June, with the first light, shall hold a senate in the temple of Apollo Palatine. All that our fathers and our registered fathers that have right of entering the senate, we warn or command you be frequently present. To acknowledge the business of the commonwealth. Whosoever is absent, his fine or mullet will be taken. His excuse will not be taken.
Note who are absent and record their names.
Fathers conscript, may what I am to utter turn good and happy for the commonwealth. And thou, Apollo, in whose holy house we here have met, inspire us all with truth and liberty of censure to our thought. The majesty of great Tiberius Caesar propounds to this grave senate the bestowing upon the man he loves, honoured Sejanus, the tribunicial dignity and power. Here are his letters, signed with his signet. What pleaseth now the fathers to be done?
Read them! Read them! Open, publicly read them!
Caesar hath honoured his own greatness much in thinking of this act.
It was a thought happy and worthy, Caesar.
And the Lord as worthy it, on whom it is directed. Most worthy.
Rome did never boast the virtue that could give envy bounds, but his, Sejanus.
Honoured and noble.
Good and great Sejanus. O most tame flattery, slavery, and fierce flattery.
Silence! Tiberius Caesar to the Senate, greeting. If you, conscript fathers, with your children, be in health, it is abundantly well. We with our friends here are so. The care of the Commonwealth, howsoever we are removed in person, cannot be absent to our thought, although, oftentimes, even to princes most present, the truth of their own affairs is hid, than which nothing falls out, more miserable to a state, or makes the art of governing more difficult. But since it hath been our easeful happiness to enjoy both the aid and industry of so vigilant a senate, we profess to have been the more indulgent to our pleasures, not as being careless of our office, but rather secure of the necessity. Neither do these common rumours of many and infamous libels published against our retirement at all afflict us, being born more out of men's ignorance than their malice, and will, neglected, find their own grave quickly, whereas, too sensibly acknowledged, it would make their obloquy ours. Nor do we desire their authors, though found, be censured, since in a free state as ours, all men ought to enjoy both their minds and tongues free.
Lapwing, lapwing.
Yet in things which shall worthily and more near concern the majesty of a prince, we shall fear to be so unnaturally cruel to our own fame as to neglect them. True it is, conscript fathers, that we have raised Sejanus from obscure and almost unknown gentry.
How? How?
To the highest and most conspicuous point of greatness, and, we hope, deservingly, yet not without danger, it being a most bold hazard in that sovereign, who, by his particular love to one, dares adventure the hatred of all his other subjects.
This touches, the blood turns.
But we affy in your loves and understandings, and do no way suspect the merit of our Sejanus to make our favours offensive to any.
Oh, good, good.
Though we could have wished his zeal had run a calmer course against Agrippina and our nephews. Howsoever, the openness of their actions declared them delinquents, and that he would have remembered, no innocence is so safe, but it rejoiceth to stand in the sight of mercy, the use of which in us he hath so quite taken away towards them by his loyal fury, as now our clemency would be thought but wearied cruelty if we should offer to exercise it.
I thank him. There I looked for it. A good fox.
Some there be that would interpret this his public severity to be particular ambition, and that under a pretext of service to us, he doth but remove his own lets, alleging that strength he hath made to himself by the Praetorian soldiers, by his faction in court and senate, by the offices he holds himself and confers on others, his popularity and dependence, his urging and almost driving us to this our unwilling retirement, and lastly, his aspiring to be our son-in-law.
This is strange.
I shall anon believe your vultures, Marcus.
Your wisdom's conscript fathers are able to examine and censure these suggestions, but were they left to our absolving voice, we durst pronounce them, as we think them, most malicious.
Oh,
Oh,
he has restored all. List.
Yet are they offered to be averred, and on the lives of the informers. What we should say, or rather, what we should not say, lords of the Senate, if this be true, our gods and goddesses confound us if we know. Only we must think we have placed our benefits ill, and conclude that in our choice, either we were wanting to the gods, or the gods to us.
And the senators shift their places.
The place grows hot. They shift.
We have not been covetous, honourable fathers, to change, neither is it now any new lust that alters our affection, or old loathing, but those needful jealousies of state, that warn wiser princes hourly to provide their safety, and do teach them how learned a thing it is to beware of the humblest enemy, much more of those great ones, whom their own employed favours have made fit for their fears.
Away.
Sit, father.
Remove.
Gods, how the leaves drop off this little wind.
We therefore desire that the offices he holds be first seized by the Senate, and himself suspended from all exercise of place or power.
How?
How?
Your leave.
Porpoise. Where's Satrius? His gout keeps him most miserably constant. Your dancing shows a tempest.
Read no more.
Lords of the Senate, hold your seats. Read on.
These letters, they are forged.
A guard! Sit still.
Enter Laco with the guards.
Here's change. Oh, silence and read forward.
Silence! And himself suspended from all exercise of place or power, but till due and mature trial be made of his innocency, which yet we can faintly apprehend the necessity to doubt. If, conscript fathers, to your more searching wisdoms there shall appear farther cause, or of farther proceeding, either to seizure of lands, goods, or more, it is not our power that shall limit your authority, or our favour that must corrupt your justice. Either were dishonourable in you, and both uncharitable to ourselves. We would willingly be present with your counsels in this business, but the danger of so potent a faction, if it should prove so, forbids our attempting it. attempting it, except one of the consuls would be entreated for our safety to undertake the guard of us home. Then we should most readily adventure. In the meantime, it shall not be fit for us to importune so judicious a senate, who know how much they hurt the innocent, that spare the guilty, and how grateful a sacrifice to the gods is the life of an ingrateful person. We reflect not in this on Sejanus, notwithstanding if you keep an eye upon him, and there is Latiaris, a senator, and Pinarius Natta, two of his most trusted ministers, and so professed, whom we desire not to have apprehended, but as the necessity of the cause exacts it.
Guard on Latiaris. The spy, the reverend spy is caught. Who pities him? Reward, sir, for your service. Now you have done your property, you see what use is made.
Exeunt Latiaris and Natta guarded.
Hang up the instrument.
Give leave.
Stand, stand. He comes upon his death that doth advance an inch toward my point.
Have we no friends here?
Husht. Where now are all the hails and acclamations?
Where indeed? We'll pause there. So it's a really interesting scene because, of course, it's not... I mean, yes, what the Praetor is saying is very important because what the Praetor is saying is reading this great thing. And, of course, some people in the room are hoping it's going to go one way and some people know it's going to go one way and some people think it's going to go another way and are very disappointed when it doesn't. And so there's that creeping sense. So it is important that it has a certain amount of stage time. It is important that there is this creep. Possibly not quite as much stage time as it is given here. There is a sense of, I put in the chat, you do get the impression he's just cut and pasted whatever account of this is there, because it's supposed to be a boring document, and therefore you're allowed to do that for the print edition, but probably not for the stage. But what you have got is this lovely sense of all the senators just going, no, I'm not with him. I'm sitting on the other side. I'm not. No, I was never with him. Oh, absolutely not. Of which is some of that's in the commentary, but also just some of that was just just this creeping away from Sejanus at this point. And of course, Sejanus is standing. He doesn't say a lot during this scene. He's just standing there. And of course, what do you do? What do you do when you are surrounded by people and you are being shafted by the emperor? And you are really quite screwed. And, it's that question of, can you get away? And then Laco enters with the guards. And it's like, oh, no, there's no escape there either. And so, yeah, there's a real interesting question. How many people beyond just Sejanus are going to get it? Because other people are already being taken out and guarded. And who's next? It's not just Sejanus' fall. There are other people who are going to fall. Thoughts in the room, Sarah?
I find it really interesting, dramatically that this isn't Tiberius himself doing this speech. It seems really odd that it's at one remove, through this letter, and I don't know if that's because that's what actually happened in the history, and Jonson's being true to the history. But I don't know. I can't help but feel that if I was him, I'd have just quietly rewritten that bit of history and had the emperor himself there, because it just would have heightened everything and raised the stakes so much. Given the scenes that we've had before between Tiberius and Sejanus, I finding it hard to believe that he wasn't tempted to just create this scene. With the two of them, but I assume that's down to historical authenticity.
It is. It's what happened. He sent a letter to the Senate, and Macro tells Sejanus that no, you're going to be made elevated, mate. It's all good. But I really like it, actually. I like the absence of the emperor. I think Aliki will say on this.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, especially since we had that scene at the beginning of the play with Tiberius making great big speeches that really didn't mean anything. and it all being about the rise of Sejanus, to have the fall happen at a remove, and in the kind of reading between the lines at first, although it gets more and more obvious as the letter goes on, of the letter, is just lovely, I thought, dramaturgically, that everything happens at that remove and almost by inference.
And yeah, it's the way the Emperor seems to work is also just that he's just setting people up against each other, that they are in conflict. You know, he elevates Macro to a point where he can take out Sejanus. That seems to be that's actively what he does in Act 3 or something like that. And then he disappears in Act 4, and it's interesting, these disappearances of characters in the second half of the play, which I suspect is straightforwardly a doubling issue. I mean, who is Tiberius in this room? He's in there somewhere. He's playing someone. I don't know who he's playing, but you know, the actor isn't sitting in the green room going, "Well, that was a good day's work." You know, along with the people who got killed in the first half as well, and the various plotters who were removed. All of them, they're all here. They're just playing someone else. They're presumably just playing a random senator. It would be very odd if I wouldn't double Praetor with Tiberius in a weird way, because that would just be confusing. But yeah, his present absence is really interesting, and I really, yeah, because it's not about him. It's about the rest of the room. It's about what all the senators are doing around Sejanus as well. I think that's the important thing. Lots of hands. I'll go to Elizabeth, then Alan, then Aliki.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to what Sarah was saying about almost like the emperor being there by proxy. And first of all, I wanted to just say that letter was long. It really was. And there were so many clauses in it. I've never seen so many commas in my life. But there's a sense that when it comes to the emperor, that he's almost... Sorry, I've lost my point. I'll come back to it. See someone else.
Alan.
Yeah, I'm getting a sort of classic political deniable instruction to another group of people. You know, I'll sort of act like the muck spreader, but of course I'm not telling you what to do. And I think the plausible reason for Tiberius' absence, he's probably got the family memory, the dynastic memory of what happened to Grandpa Julius.
Yes, there's an awful lot of soldiers surrounding this Senate at the moment, and backstabbing can go, you know, swords can be pointed in different directions. I'll go back to Elizabeth and Aliki.
I've got my point back. The point was just that the way the kind of the speech was being given through the letter made me think of Jonson putting words into his actors' mouths and his characters' mouths as well. And I thought there was something very meta about it.
Yes, the voice of Tiberius being channeled through this other guy, and also what Ben Jonson and all playwrights do to their actors and their characters. Oh yeah, I like that. Aliki.
Oh, we were talking yesterday about the tension between personal loyalties in this play and institutional power. And it just comes right down to that, I think. The institution is that the emperor's word is law, even at a remove. And it's being played that way to remove the possibility of personal maneuvering. I love it.
Yeah, and you know, again, this is a fairly straightforward, hack this back. I mean, you know, we need the beats, but we don't need quite so many words, or just add more. It would be down to how much rhubarbing you can get away with as well. I mean, there's an awful. You're spending you're not rehearsing the Praetor. The Praetor just turns up with the speech written on a bit of paper. They don't even have to learn it. I mean, that's the great thing about this speech. Praetor doesn't have to learn a damn thing. So long as the props guy doesn't betray you, you're fine. But everybody else has to be really drilled as to where their reactions go and how much they are doing and how it builds. It's actually a really difficult scene to rehearse in a sense, because you need everybody to turn up, and all the interjections have to be timed really well, so that they flow and ebb, because this is a it's a big scene where the shift is down to everyone. everybody's going to be working hard at reaction acting, of standing there and not doing too big a reaction, but not too small, and everybody being on the right sort of moment. So it's a tricky one. Okay, let us continue, because Sejanus not in a great place. Have we no friends here? Enter Macro.
Hail to the consuls and this noble senate.
Is Macro here? Oh, thou art lost, Sejanus.
Sit still and unaffrighted, reverend fathers. Macro, by Caesar's grace, the new-made provost, and now possessed of the Praetorian bands, an honour late belonged to that proud man, bids you be safe, and to your constant doom of his deservings offers you the surety of all the soldiers, tribunes, and centurions received in our command.
Sejanus, Sejanus, stand forth, Sejanus.
Am I called?
Aye, thou insolent monster, art bid stand.
Why, Macro, it hath been otherwise between you and I. This court that knows us both has seen a difference, and can, if it be pleased to speak, confirm whose insolence is most.
Come down, Typhoeus, if mine be most. Lo, thus I make it more. Kick up thy heels in air, tear off thy robe, play with thy beard and nostrils. Thus 'tis fit, and no man take compassion of thy state, to use the ungrateful viper, tread his brains into the earth.
Forbear.
I could lose all my humanity now to a well to torture so meriting a traitor. Wherefore, fathers, sit you amazed and silent, and not censure this wretch, who, in the hour he first rebelled against Caesar's bounty, did condemn himself. Legra, the field where all the sons of earth mustered against the gods, did ne'er acknowledge so proud and huge a monster.
Take him hence, and all the gods guard Caesar.
Take him hence.
Hence.
To the dungeon with him.
He deserves it.
Crown all our doors with bays.
Let Knox, with gilded horns and garlands, straight be led unto the Capitol.
And sacrifice to Jove for Caesar's safety.
All our gods be present still to Caesar.
Phoebus.
Mars,
Diana.
Pallas.
Juno, Mercury, all guard him.
Forth, thou prodigy of men.
Exit Sejanus guarded.
Let all the traitors' titles be defaced.
His images and statues be pulled down.
His chariot wheels be broken.
And the legs of the poor horses that deserved naught, let them be broken too.
Exeunt Lictors, Precones, Macro, Regulus, basically everyone apart from Lepidus, Arruntius, and a few senators. Pick a number. Oh, violent change and whirl of men's affections.
Like us both, their bulks and souls were bound on Fortune's wheel, and must act only with her motion.
Who would depend upon the popular air or voice of men that have today beheld that which, if all the gods had declared, would not have been believed? Sejanus fall? He that this morn rose proudly as the sun, and breaking through the mist of client's breath came on, as gazed at and admired as he, when superstitious Moors salute his light, that had our servile nobles waiting him as common grooms, and hanging on his look no less than human life on destiny, that had men's knees as frequent to the gods, and sacrifices more than Rome had altars, and this man fall? Fall? Aye, without a look that durst appear his friend, or lend so much of vain relief to his changed state as pity.
They that before like gnats played in his beams, and thronged to circumscribe him, now not seen, nor deign to hold a common seat with him. Others that waited him under the Senate now inhumanely ravish him to prison, whom but this morn they followed as their lord, guard through the streets, bound like a fugitive, instead of wreaths give fetters, strokes for stoops, blind shame for honours, and black taunts for titles. Who would trust slippery chance?
They that would make themselves her spoil, and foolishly forget, when she doth flatter, that she comes to prey. Fortune, thou hadst no deity, if men had wisdom. We have placed thee so high, by fond belief in thy felicity. All together now.
Gods, God
God,
Caesar!
God, Caesar.
All the
All
gods,
the
God
gods,
Caesar!
God
All the guards, God Caesar!
Re-enter Macro, Regulus, and divers senators.
Now, great Sejanus, you that awed the state and sought to bring the nobles to your whip, that would be Caesar's tutor and dispose of dignities and offices, that had the public head still bare to your designs, and made the general voice to echo yours, that looked for salutations 12 score off, and would have pyramids, yea, temples reared to your huge greatness. Now you lie as flat as was your pride advanced.
Thanks to the gods.
And praise to Macro that hath saved Rome. Liberty, 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 lead on! And praise to Macro that hath saved Rome. Exeunt all but Arruntius and Lepidus.
Prophesy out of the Senate's flattery that this new fellow, Macro, will become a greater prodigy in Rome than he that is now fallen.
Enter Terentius.
Oh, you, whose minds are good, and have not forced all mankind from your breasts, but yet have so much stock of virtue left to pity guilty states when they are wretched, lend your soft ears to hear, eyes to weep, deeds done by men beyond the acts of furies. The eager multitude, who never yet knew why to love or hate, but only pleased to express their rage of power, no sooner heard the murmur of Sejanus in decline, but with that speed and heat of appetite with which they greedily devour the way to some great sports or a new theatre, they filled the Capitol and Pompey's cirque, where like so many mastiffs biting stones, as if his statues now were sensitive of their wild fury. If first they tear them down, then, fastening ropes, drag them along the streets, crying in scorn. This was that rich head was crowned with garlands and with odours. This was in Rome so reverenced. Now the furnace and the bellows shall to work, the great Sejanus crack, and piece by piece drop in the founder's pit.
Oh, popular rage.
Whilst the Senate at the Temple of Concord make haste to meet again, and thronging cry, "Let us condemn him, tread him down in water, while he doth lie upon the bank. Away!" While some, more tardy, crying to their bearers, "He will be censured. Here we come! Run, knaves! Use that furious diligence, for fear their bondmen should inform against their slackness, and bring their quaking flesh under the hook." The rout they follow with confused voice, crying, "The glad say they could ne'er abide him." Inquire, what man he was, what kind of face, what beard he had, what nose, what lips. Protest they ever did presage he'd come to this. They never thought him wise, nor valiant. Ask after his garments when he dies, what death. And not a beast of all the herd demands what was his crime, or who were his accusers, under what proof or testimony he fell. There came, says one, a huge long-worded letter from Capreae against him. Did they so? Oh, they're satisfied. No more.
Alas, they follow fortune and hate men condemned, guilty or not.
But had Sejanus thrived in his design and prosperously oppressed the old Tiberius, then, in that same minute, these very rascals that now rage like furies would have proclaimed Sejanus emperor.
But what have followed?
Sentenced by the Senate to lose his head, which was no sooner off, but that and the unfortunate trunk was seized by the rude multitude, who, not content with what the forward justice of the state officiously had done, with violent rage have rent it limb from limb. 1,000 heads, 1,000 hands, 10,000 tongues and voices employed at once in several acts of malice. Old men, not stayed with age, virgins with shame, late wives with loss of husbands, mother of children, losing all grief in joy of his sad fall, run quite transported with their cruelty. These mounting at his head, these at his face, these digging out his eyes, those with his brains sprinkling themselves, their houses, at their friends. Others are met, have ravished thence an arm, deal small pieces of flesh for favours. These with a thigh, this hath cut off his hands, this his feet, these fingers, these toes, that hath his liver, he his heart. I wants nothing but room for wrath and place for hatred. What cannot oft be done is now o'erdone. The whole and all of what was great Sejanus, next to Caesar to possess the world, now torn and scattered. It needs no grave. Each little dust covers a little part. So lies he nowhere, yet often buried.
Enter Nuntius.
More of Sejanus?
Yes.
What can be added? We know him dead.
Then there begin your pity. There is enough behind to melt even Rome and Caesar into tears, since never slave could yet so highly offend, but tyranny in torturing him would make him worth lamenting. A son and daughter to the dead Sejanus, of whom there is not now so much remaining as would give fastening to the hangman's hook, have they drawn forth for father sacrifice, whose tenderness of knowledge, unripe years, and childish silly innocence was such as scarce would lend them feeling of their danger. The girl, so simple as she often asked, where they would lead her, for what cause they dragged her, cried she would do no more, that she could take warning with beating. And because our laws admit no virgin immature to die, the wittily and strangely cruel Macro delivered her to be deflowered and spoiled by the rude lust of the licentious hangman, then to be strangled with her harmless brother.
Oh, act most worthy hell and lasting night to hide it from the world.
Their bodies thrown into the Gemenes, I know not how or by what accident returned. The mother, the expulsed Apicata, finds them there, whom when she saw lie spread on the degrees after a world of fury on herself, tearing her hair, defacing of her face, beating her breasts and womb, kneeling amazed, crying to heaven, then to them, at last her drowned voice gat up above her woes, and with such black and bitter execrations as might affright the gods and force the sun run backward to the east, nay, make the old deformed chaos rise again to overwhelm them, us, and all the world. She fills the air, upbraids the heavens with their partial dooms, defies their tyrannous powers, and demands what she and those poor innocents have transgressed, that they must suffer such a share in vengeance, whilst Livia, Lictor, and Eudemus live, who, as she says, and firmly vows to prove it, to Caesar and the Senate poisoned Drusus?
Confederates with her husband.
Aye.
Strange act.
Strangely opened. What says now my monster the multitude? They reel now, do they not?
Their gall is gone, and now they begin to weep the mischief they have done.
I thank them. Rogues.
Part are so stupid or so flexible as they believe him innocent. All grieve, and some whose hands yet reek with his warm blood and gripe the part which they did tear of him, wish him collected and created new.
How fortune plies her sports when she begins to practice them, pursues, continues, adds, confounds, with varying her impassioned moods.
Dost thou hope, Fortune, to redeem thy crimes, to make amend for thy ill-placed favours with these strange punishments? Forbear, you things that stand upon the pinnacles of state, to boast your slippery height. When you do fall, you pash yourselves in pieces, ne'er to rise, and he that lends you pity is not wise.
Let this example move the insolent man not to grow proud and careless of the gods. It is an odious wisdom to blaspheme, much more to slighten or deny their powers. For the morning so great and high, thus low and little for the even doth lie.
And they exit. We get to the consequences of the fall of Sejanus, and it really hits the innocent's heart. I mean, it's that we have the falling of the statue, we have his execution, and then we have what happens to his family. And yeah, we have that outpouring of popular violence. And it's interesting the way we have this sort of little scene with Lepidus and Arruntius. We're sort of going, hey, this went well. And then they're brought down to earth by what happens when this outpouring happens. And, we have the rise of Macro as well. So it's like, well, we got rid of Sejanus. Macro's not better. What he does is really horrific. We can talk about varying degrees of horror with what Sejanus did before, but there does seem to be an escalation here, that this is what this state is doing, is that it's devolving and getting worse. With every turnover of this fortune's wheel. Thoughts from the room? It's a really depressing ending, isn't it? It suddenly feels like a tragedy, whereas before I wasn't that fussed about whether Sejanus fell. But that seems deliberate. That seems like the play's doing that. But that's going, oh, you were enjoying this whole political manoeuvring thing. Here's actually the consequences for the people lower down the chain. And that's really actually quite a powerful effect. Kudos to the way that's been structured, because that's very, very effective. Thoughts, because we're all a bit depressed now, aren't we? As far as any of this history is said to be true, this is based on a very, very biased bit of history, shall we say. So some of this may not have actually happened, but a lot of it did. Stephen, then Aliki.
Yeah, it moves into, via report, it moves out of kind of politics and into, sort of taboo, really. We are, there's a kind of in a world that is so full of realpolitik and people are saying things about the gods, but, there is a kind of sacral dimension to this. The sheer awfulness of what happens to him. He's not just killed. He's sort of, torn to bits. And that last detail, I think it might be the last detail, saying, well, we can't provide a grave, just the dust on the bits in the street, And that really takes it completely out of the territory it's inhabited for so much of the play, I think, which is, who's in, who's out, what's happening at court sort of thing. And it's, as people have been saying, yeah, they're all just bloody Romans. They're all just as bad as one another. I wouldn't vote for any of them. And then there's this kind of astonishing turn in those final speeches, I think, particularly the stuff of Terentius, and it's almost like we're out of Rome and we're in some kind of ancient Greek scenario.
Yeah, it really feels like ancient Greek tragedy, doesn't it? That sense of the body torn apart at the end. It's very Bacchic in that sense. Aliki.
Yeah, I mean, sure, he meets Pentheus's fate in the end, but we have every reason to believe that this is true. And if you read even a little bit of Roman history, and I don't actually read the Roman historians, I read historical novels, but they're pretty good on the facts. This kind of gross political violence was not atypical even of the Republic, never mind of the Empire, and mob violence. So I think it's really realistic in that sense. I don't know. I don't know what exactly Jonson's sources were or how reliable they are, but I don't think there's any reason to dispute it. It really does bring you crashing back down to the consequences of political distress. We have this We have this image of Roman politics being very much about the palace and the empire, and to a lesser extent the Senate, and then wow.
Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, mine's more perhaps straying into the territory of final thoughts, but it's this scene that's made me think about it. I don't normally, because I'm constantly thinking about how you would actually do this now. And I do think it would make a very good audio play as well. But in terms of staging, in a theatre, I don't normally, I'm not normally a fan of doing early modern plays in, contemporary dress and making that kind of slightly trite parallel with like, look, this is so relevant to today. Because it's just like it's been done a lot and it gets done all the time, and why would you bother doing it again? But actually this ending, just thinking about it in terms of what's happening in politics now, especially in America. I mean, I'm not American, but I follow American politics quite closely, and the jostling and maneuvering that goes on at the top level, and then the consequences of that, but like the jostling and maneuvering that goes on at the top level without really any thought for what the knock-on consequences are going to be when just the ordinary people see that jostling and maneuvering, and some people interpret it one way and some people interpret it another, and a frenzy gets whipped up, and then afterwards you have all these people going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, I can't believe that happened, like what was I thinking, or whatever, when it's too late. I just think that's a really it's a lesson that we still have not learnt as humans, and it's something that I can sort of see happening at the moment, not just in America actually, but I mean in other parts of the world too. And so I think that ending is absolutely brilliant, and I think that is still a story that still needs telling, and kind of needs hammering home. So I'd be actually tempted to actually set that in a contemporary frame, and I think it would be really easy to do as well.
Well, I mean, there are elements that make it really hard and elements that make it really easy. I mean, there's. when the RSC did it the better part of 20 years ago, they latched onto the falling statues imagery, which was very current then. A lot of what's happening at the end of this play has imagery that we've lived through in relatively recent years, and the potential of where this goes is also something that we're living with, and the consequences of this. Rome isn't a democracy at this point, or even close to. The Senate is it doesn't function that way. But the idea of having any kind of liaising with the people and some kind of something going on underneath just having a monarch who's in charge of everything, is very delicate, and it's very easy for people to come in like Sejanus, like Macro, and to smash things to bits, and then you're not quite sure how to put it back together again. And so there's a lot of that going on. We are drifting into final thoughts, and I think that's fine to do that, unless anyone has additional thoughts about this final scene. I say it really does pack a punch. In a way that I felt this final act is affecting me in a very different way to the rest of the play had done, in the sense that there was that question of how one engages with some of that earlier stuff, whether one's emotionally engaging with it, and then for the play to deliver this punch at the end, which is much more effective than I was expecting. And I wonder how much of that is structurally intended, and how much of that is just, it's a really good few speeches at the end that really work. We have that structural question of, it does kind of really need a big cast, which makes life difficult. For audio, there are some scenes that are brilliant for audio, and then some scenes that are really, really rubbish for audio. So it's asking a lot to put on. It's not structurally a problem in terms of it being a long play. It's actually very easy to cut down. I see nothing structurally difficult about trimming those longer speeches back to their better points and a few little bits and pieces. But I can't see how to elide too many of these characters. The whole point of the scene is that there are a lot of characters on stage. So I'm not sure in that sense. This is one where you sort of have to go large or go home, which is not inherently a bad thing. You know, there are plenty of people who can do that. So, final thoughts from around the room. Anyone who's interested in the history of the stage play can now, in its original form, can now let rip if they so wish, because we've read the play. But otherwise, if you just want to comment on the play itself, feel free to do that. Sarah, do you feel you've done your final thought, or do I'll maybe circle round if you have an additional one. Aliki, do you have any final thoughts about this one?
Yeah, my previous encounters with Jonson in our reading room have left me very cynical about his fame and why is he one of the guys I'd heard of. But this one completely redeems him as a playwright, so far as I'm concerned. This is just beautifully structured, dramaturgically precise. It's got gorgeous verse, and I love it. If we had the bodies, I'd love to do it.
Mm. Yes, it's interesting. He took a bit of bruising with some of his, I think, and you know he walked away from the stage saying, "Right, I'm going to go away and have a think for a bit," and he pretty much does that for a year and a half, 2 years, and then produces this, which it has to be said was initially a total failure. It's a initial appearance, but also I think I can throw this in now. The script we have here is not that initial performance script. And it's not for the usual reasons with Ben Jonson. There's bits of it are probably by somebody else in the original version. And then a couple of years later, his version appears, which does seem to potentially have also been performed again and have been successful. So, but in publishing it, it's probably also longer than it would have been on stage. So there's some stuff here that's literary. So it's gone through quite a weird journey to get to us as a script. Stephen probably has more on this than I. So this is both a revision of a script that is performed and theatrical, but has been expanded in a literary way. But may have, as I say, in something like this form, been successful, whereas the original performance was not necessarily. And of course, there are other political problems that he faced as a result of this as well, some of which it can be more overstated or understated. Stephen, I'll go to you because you waved.
Yeah, well, it seems a good place to add in a little bit more on that. And also, I think it speaks to Sarah's contemporaneity point, which is the other big thing that I've been sitting on, and perhaps other people have been sitting on, is that Jonson is hauled up before the Privy Council and accused of popery and treason for his Sejanus. The Earl of Northampton grabs him, and he has to. The whole thing about Jonson being a papist, he's always in trouble for this in his early years. His earlier plays like Poetaster are full of references to real people, this kind of war of the theatres. He's having a pop at Decker or whoever it is. So, which is what satire is supposed to do. It's supposed to actually go for named people, or their understanding of satire. So we've got another layer here of contemporaneity, and the best kind of account of that I found is why should Northampton be doing this? Is that 1603, which is the year that Jonson said it was first performed. So the text comes from 1605, which is Rob's point. 1603 is the show trial of Sir Walter Raleigh, just after James comes to the throne. And he's basically arrested on trumped up charges. And there's a show trial. And Raleigh kind of does this bravura defense of himself, where technically, legally, he is guilty because he's been fingered by a mate of his as discussing the possibility of deposing James and putting his cousin on the throne with Spanish backing. So that's enough in law to get you found guilty of treason. But Raleigh does so well at his trial that kind of messengers go back to James and go, I know we should execute him, but we can't really do that because it would make a complete mockery. So what happens then to Raleigh is that he spends the next 10 years or whatever it is in the Tower under permanent kind of sentence of death. And eventually, ironically, given that he was in the Tower for conspiring with the Spanish, he's executed because James wants to cozy up with the Spanish. So he's kind of executed for being too anti-Spanish. But so the point being, right in the middle of the play, if you remember, Silius, there's all this stuff and there's basically this kind of, Stalinist thing going on. And there's this guy who's a member of the Awkward Squad, and he kills himself, if you remember. When Raleigh was in the Tower, he tried to kill himself. He didn't manage it. But this was awaiting trial. So we've got a sort of contemporary resonance overlaid here, which is probably enough for Jonson to be hauled up. And so when it's published, not only does Jonson, fairly prominently say, this was allowed by the master of the revels, somebody did look at it, but you get and you get Chapman or whoever's contribution taken out of it, because Jonson's trying to really, really protect himself, which is why the original is absolutely covered in footnotes going, this isn't me, this is from the Roman historians, so I can't possibly be accused of what Cremutius Cordus is accused of in this version of the play. Remembering that Jonson's initial troubles are before the rewrite. So what we've got is a rewrite after not only it being hissed from the stage, and it's interesting to think about all this sort of anti-populist stuff that is right at the end, is that as a response to being booed off stage, or is it actually the thing that made it booed off stage? It's kind of like snottiness about the audience. So we do have a contemporaneity in Jonson's own day as well. It's not only a really good play in the form that we've got it, but it is one which is doing what Cordus is said to do, which is using the parallels of the times. And he actually gets in trouble for it. Gets hauled up before the highest court in the land.
He keeps getting in trouble. I mean,
he does. He's brought up by a bricklayer, isn't he? His dad dies when he's very young, and he's adopted by this bricklayer, and he cannot be doing with these Ponzi court poet types. He's kind of self-made man. He's got lots of Latin and even more Greek, and he is a scholar to his fingertips. And he is going to spend the rest of his life making sure that you bloody well know it.
Yeah. After, Isle of Dogs a few years earlier and there's some various other things, he does keep prodding that bear, doesn't he? Which is odd because he also spends an awful amount of time really trying to suck up to various individuals and patronage networks as well. So it's a really interesting sort of contradiction that it's always a bit dangerous to add too much biography. But I think we're well past that with Jonson. I've sort of given up trying to assess the plays on their own merits. So I'll go to Alan. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I must admit the whole thing overall does remind me about the comment about Wagner. Some wonderful moments and some dreadful quarters of an hour. I think quite honestly, this is rather like a play equivalent of the Ring Cycle. You'd need some very good cushions to make this one work in a theatre performance. At the length it is, it's going to run for the fat end of 4 hours, isn't it?
Yes, but we wouldn't run it that way. We would cut the bits that are too long, so that's not a problem. I will keep reiterating this point. A play that is too long is not a problem. We invented the blue pencil, and this play is really easy to cut. If the scenes individually were boring, then there would be a problem. But actually, I don't think we found any boring scenes, have we?
That's the issue. It's a matter of micro trims rather than basically excising a whole series of pages, which we've come across some other scripts over the time, where you think, well, the whole of that act basically isn't doing anything much useful. I quite honestly see this as something like a 5-part mini-series, which will bring it down to, 5 installments each of about half to 3/4 of an hour, which I think could work. And if it's done as an audio series, then, people can get up and stretch their legs at convenient points.
Yeah, I mean, it is structured really well, actually. Each act has a sort of unity to it, but is also moving the story forward. So it does structure itself. There is only the real problem of making some of those bigger scenes function in audio. But otherwise, I mean, it would make quite a good television series, frankly. I think actually that would be where some of those excesses would be layered out by good camera work and beautiful lighting. And I mean, a lot of this is going to be down to really nice, good acting to make some of it live. But yeah, it's doing really interesting stuff. Over to Elizabeth, who hasn't been here for the whole play. You've just had Act 5. What an act you had! Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agreed with everything Aliki said. I thought that she was completely right. I really, really enjoyed the play. I was thinking about the stuff Stephen was saying as well about the almost allegorical nature of the text. So I'm going to see The Crucible, and I was thinking about the Salem witch trials and McCarthyism, and again, just that voice, that almost meta narrative of like Jonson putting his political voice into his work. I thought that gives the play an edge, a sort of a really jagged edge to it that I like. And it makes it sort of maybe a bit different from some of the other texts we've done that have similar sort of storylines.
And there's something actually about the thesis of the play, because it's fine to be talking about fortune and Fortune's Wheel, which the play is very keen on. At the end, there's an interesting hypocrisy going on here at the final scene, and it's the way you play that's, I think, important, because of course you have all these people talking about those commoners out there doing all this terrible violence, and I'm sitting here going, but it's you guys. You instigated all of this. You made this happen. And it's an interesting question whether that lands and how that lands is making it clear that all these woe is me, isn't this awful? All those terrible idiot peasants out there tearing people to shreds. But I say the people saying all this stuff are the people implicated, and then they just wring their hands for a bit. So I wonder whether that's actually what Jonson is trying to do, because I don't think it is. I don't think he's actually implicating them. I think he's just saying, aren't people awful? Which might be Ben Jonson's thesis overall, which might, as I say, be a bit of a problem with the text. Alex, you similarly have only been here for this session, but you died and then got to relate the terrible things that happened to your family.
Yeah, that was neat. It's interesting. I'm a big fan of The Alchemist. It's one of my favorite plays. But I've never really looked at Jonson's tragedies. And taking it just on the bit that I've read, I really like it as a play, and I like that I sort of hadn't really read ahead on it, and the fact that it took a couple of sharp left turns on occasion that I wasn't expecting. I loved the kind of, well, I'm going to tell you, but you mustn't tell anyone scene, which played like that The Number, the Rumour, and Fiddler on the Roof, which I think has been cut from the modern day version, where they all pass on a thing that becomes distorted. And again, that's a huge cast play, and you cannot distill that down, because the whole point is it's about this community and all the small cogs in it. And I loved it. I loved the end. I wasn't originally sold on the Praetor. I thought that was a bit of a cop-out, not having the Emperor come back in at the end. But I'm sort of persuaded by the arguments, and I'm also persuaded by the fact that you don't really get a big "I'm going to my death" speech from Sejanus. He's literally kind of deprived of his voice. I mean, God knows he's probably talked enough in the earlier acts, but he's sort of deprived of his voice at the end. And it's sort of like, I love the image of that wheel of fortune, but also the idea of there being a vacuum. There's kind of a vacuum where the emperor should be. He's only there by proxy. We don't see the death. It's sort of Dryden-esque off stage, and we get told about it. And I thought that was a real gut punch at the end, the kind of that description. And again, like chiming in with what Sarah and other people have said, that you're trying to avoid going, oh, it's just like today, but there's something inescapably contemporary about it. Weirdly, the trial scene reminded me most of the trial in the musical Chicago, which is actually all about the ensemble's reactions to stuff and the percussion. It's really not very much about what Billy Flynn and Roxy are doing. It's their reactions that make it. And I think, again, like part of the issue of reading it, isn't it, is that you lose that without staging. You lose the visual, that we have no record of exactly what that would have been, but it would add so much. And I agree with you that actually a lot of that story would be told by, you almost don't need to hear everything your Praetor is saying. It's more how people are reacting to it. So yeah, I might go back and read the rest of it now.
Yeah, and it is that the thing about absences. I mean, yes, maybe that's the additional thing, that because Tiberius isn't there, and there's almost that's part of the invitation for this level of chaos to suddenly erupt, is that it's just some random thug called Macro with his private army going out and just doing stuff. The emperor's just sent a letter. How much of this, in people's minds might be true? You were talking about he doesn't get a death speech. He doesn't. And actually, Sejanus doesn't say anywhere near as much as I thought he was going to. At the beginning of the play, I thought there were some long speeches, and I thought, oh God, he's not going to just keep doing this. And you can almost hear Ben Jonson actually just pulling back a bit and saying, actually, no, let's have fewer big speeches now. And he hasn't done so much. He did a few in this act, the beginning of the act, but he hadn't done any for quite a while. Actually, he wasn't really active in that way. So Sejanus isn't quite as massive a role as I thought he was going to be. I haven't done an assessment on how many lines, but but yeah, he doesn't get a death speech. He doesn't get to be noble. There's nothing noble about this end at all. Some people talk about nobility occasionally, but you never really see any of it. Sarah, did you have any additional final thoughts you wanted to throw in now that we're actually into final thoughts?
No, not really. I just I thought it was really good, and in spite of the length of it, which as you say, it can be cut quite easily. I found it weirdly concise. I just found it very within the scenes, there were, bits that maybe went on and on and on, but there were no scenes that were extraneous. I didn't feel. I felt that everything that was happening needed to happen. You needed to see, each scene needed to be there. And yeah, I do think when you've got this, if you were to do it on audio, or when you were talking about doing it as a TV show, or as a film, even if you had that sense of overlapping conversations, of whispers in one corridor and whispers in another room, and scheming here and plotting there, and it all kind of coming, going back to what Elizabeth was saying earlier about it almost being time. All these scenes happening at the same time. Time, stretches and shrinks in this play. I just think it could be really well, just really well done. And I just thought it was just a really tasty one to read and to hopefully take forward.
Yeah, and just a brief note on the Praetor again. The Praetor's got a really interesting job because, of course, the Praetor hasn't read this in advance. It was sealed when it arrived. So the Praetor's reaction is as important as everybody else's, because it might be there's an awkward pause at a point when the Praetor figure out where this is going. Okay, so even though it looks like this awful long speech, but it is broken up, and there's a lot of room for manoeuvre there, actually. Aliki.
You could do one of these postmodern things where you get a member of the audience up and have them unseal it and read it and not know what's going to happen. I think that would be brilliant.
Yeah, just you do pre-vet them in advance to make sure that they can do the job, because it's not an easy speech. But yeah, you don't tell them what it is. Right. Well, we have pretty much run out of time, unless anyone is burning to throw anything else onto the pyre of history. We've found a lot of good stuff here to play with. So all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye, like a ridiculous cat.